Okay, folks, here we go. A little bit of a warm Thursday. A lot of news, though. Yep. We're going to begin in just a moment. Attorney Stephanie Murphy joining us. We're going to talk Karen Read. There's big developments with the Karen Read trial. We're going to talk about that and more. This very warm Thursday. Just a reminder, we are live on AM 1380. That is really remarkable. Richard Green will not be testifying. That's a game changer. That's another wall that has fallen. Let's check the audio. First, let's go to X. Yep. That's a big development with Richard Green. Yep. There we go. X. Sounds nice and clean to me. Nice and clean. That's a big development. It is. By the way, folks, Court TV tonight at 9. Court TV tomorrow morning at 9. And then tomorrow from 3 to 4. So you have Fox News Channel, and then there's Fox Nation streaming live on Fox Nation 3 to 4 tomorrow. Obviously talking Karen Read. So tonight at 9 with Vinny on Court TV. Tomorrow morning at 9. 12 hours later. 9 o'clock, live with Julie Grant. And then 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, we'll be live on Fox Nation, streaming everywhere. By the way, good afternoon. It's still morning. Good morning. All these people in New Zealand that are watching, I see you. Good afternoon to towels everywhere. We had a big appearance with Grant yesterday on Towel Nation. Yes. All right. Roger's ready. Let me check the YouTube. There it is. Yes. Good. Thank you. Keep deleting those messages. There it is. Yes. Good. Thank you. Keep deleting those messages. Yeah. Get rid of the Karen Read people. Good. Thank you. Keep deleting those messages. Get rid of the Karen Read people. Good. Thank you. Keep deleting. They're too rude. Well, we're also live on Facebook, and we're also going to be live on the radio, and we're live on X. So, Karen Read crowd is nervous, folks. There's no question about it. They should be. But we're going to talk about it. There's Jane Rice. You know, there's a new poll out that I'm going to address, that apparently the defense did a poll, and the number one person that has been convincing people on the prosecution's case has been this program. So I'm very happy about that. That was not by design. As many of you know, I come into this, hey, totally objective, down the middle. Let's see what the case shows, but if it is what it is. All right. We are going to begin in. We are beginning in 15 seconds. I'm going to start with Attorney Stephanie Murphy talking Karen Read. Okay. At 1:06 on this Thursday, it's June 5th, hottest day we've had here in the Northeast so far in this year. Good afternoon. It is the chosen one. Now we're live 1 to 2. Those of you the radio, you've been listening since 11. We intersplice sometimes live there, but always live 1 to 2. And then also good afternoon. So right now we're live on AM 1380, 99.9 FM. We're also live on our Facebook page, which is approaching. We're about to hit 95,000. We're live on our X page, which continues to grow. 20,000. It's a different type of platform. And then also live on YouTube as we're about to hit 64,000. Don't forget about our TikTok channel, almost 110,000 followers. And also, by demand, we're also on Instagram as we're inching closer to 60,000. This portion of the program is brought to you by PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Finally, we can appreciate, boy, it sounds like a nice idea to be outside. Everything available: annuals, perennials, trees and shrubs, hanging pots, 10-inch, 12-inch moss baskets, hanging impatiens, pansies, marigold bags, large selection of beautiful patio pots. Folks, they're a full-scale nursery. They're open 7 days a week. Stop in and see them right off of Route 4. My friends, Steve and Debbie and Junior and Byron and Lauren. It's PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. They're open 7 days a week. Quality, you get to support a local business, and look for them on Facebook, PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. And don't forget depetro.com, our website, which has all links to all of our social media. Plus, if you want to get in touch with me, if you'd like to reach me, log on to depetro.com, no eyes. And it's brought to you by the Coesit Inn, 226 Coesit Avenue, West Warwick. Folks, lunch, dinner, drinks in the lounge. They're waiting for you at the Coesit Inn. Now, one thing, whether we're out covering Road Patrol Live like we were last night at Chad Brown, or whether we're in a courtroom, whether we're in a courtroom and a crime scene, folks, there's many occasions that people may not realize it, but they could use some legal advice. Contact Marin, Barrett, and Murphy, criminal defense attorneys, over 50 years combined Rhode Island criminal defense experience. Remember, your fight becomes their fight. Call them 401-228-8271. Marin, Barrett, and Murphy Law Firm. Free consultation. And remember, just say you're a friend of the show. Maybe you're not sure you need to hire an attorney, but don't ask your brother-in-law. Don't ask, the person you're currently dating. Don't ask your next door neighbor. Sometimes I've interviewed people. Who told you to do that? Well, the guy I work with. What's his legal background? Folks, call. That's what they're there for. 24/7. Marin, Barrett, and Murphy Law Firm. Maybe you don't need an attorney. Why not find out? Call them. Call Stephanie, 401-228-8271. Explain your situation. Maybe you don't need an attorney. I don't know. But don't ask your brother-in-law. Don't ask your next door neighbor. Don't ask the person that sits next to you at work. Don't ask the person behind you at the drive-thru at McDonald's. No, call Solid Legal Advice, 401-228-8271. So let's bring her on. Again, she is our legal expert. And joining us on this very warm Thursday is attorney Stephanie Murphy. Good afternoon, Stephanie.
Hi, John. How are you?
Very well. Stephanie, talking all things Karen Read. Why don't we start off? I have some very pointed questions, but I know you're also following the trial. So I'd like to hear just some of your thoughts, where we are. It's a day off, by the way, in court. The judges said they're actually running ahead of schedule. The defense is putting on their case right now. Tomorrow will be a full day. Where are your thoughts right now as far as Karen Read?
Well, hopefully they're getting towards the end of calling witnesses and stuff like that. I know there's probably a bunch more witnesses that they want to call or may not call. And then it's probably going to come down to whether or not Karen Read is going to testify. So I think it's at an interesting place in the trial in terms of what the witnesses are saying, what the Commonwealth is doing with these witnesses, and who the defense is actually calling and who they're deciding not to call. So it's very interesting each day to kind of see what happens.
Have you ever had a situation where maybe you had someone you were representing who wanted to testify, but then you decided, I don't think that's a good idea? And have you had, conversely, a situation where you had someone where you suggested, I think you should take the stand?
Yeah, I've had both, in all honesty. And typically it's always up to your client about whether or not I can't make that decision for them. So even if I advise somebody not to take the stand, if my client wants to take the stand, they have that absolute right to take the stand, even if it's against my, judgment or my advice to them. Many times I try never to put my client on the stand. And when I've done a number of jury trials, each year, and typically the ones where I feel strong about, I don't put my client on the stand because I don't want to open the door to anything that the juror might not like about my client or anything like that. So I typically always try not to put my client on the stand and try to win the case based on the cross-examination in the state's case or by presenting witnesses. But putting your client on the stand can be very risky. But in the North Kingstown case, John and John put the client on the stand and it really worked out. But I think putting your client on the stand and getting a not guilty verdict, I think is more slim than if you keep your client off of the stand, in all honesty.
It's a tough one. We also just had last month that doctor in
Yeah.
Massachusetts that, threw his wife, strangled the wife, threw her in the pond. And then he took the stand and he got
Right.
the lesser charge. I always think it's interesting, Stephanie. The late Buddy Cianci told me one time, in hindsight, he wished he had taken the stand. He was convinced if he got up on the stand that he could convince the jury. They made the decision not to. And also, it was just last year, the Officer Dolan case, Pawtucket police officer, I covered that. He took the stand. He was a fantastic witness on the stand. He'd been in the Army. He was a police officer. I've seen where I think it can help if they can take the stand.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it depends on the case. It depends on the client. Also, what really comes into play on a lot of cases is whether or not your client has a criminal record. So if you put your client on the stand with a criminal record, all the demons and all the bad stuff is subject to cross-examination. So it's a lot easier to make the decision if your client has a clean record and his prior record or her prior record is not coming in. But if your client has a record, as soon as he takes a stand, the entire jury is going to know exactly what that record is, what he's been charged with. And that's kind of a game changer. So if you have a client who has no record, I think, it's absolutely a very, careful conversation you have to have with your client.
Now, as far as Karen Reed, Stephanie, they saw some jury instructions were put into motion. One of them said the jury should not draw an inference that the defendant did not take the stand. She was asked about it, and she said, well, that's boilerplate. But what about a situation? There is videotape that's been played of Karen Reed where she's saying she spoke with attorney David Yannetti and was saying, this whole business of what if I clipped him? What if I ran over his foot? And then she said, and David said, no, there'd be culpability there. What about, and I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but just for general knowledge for people that are listening and watching, but what about an attorney that can you put a defendant on the stand if maybe during the course of going through the case, the attorney learned that what they're going to say on the stand isn't, what they had gone over with them?
Well, I think it's a case by case basis, meaning that sometimes you have a conversation with your client and those, are bound by the attorney-client, relationship and everything like that. But you also have a duty to the court to make sure there's no untruthful statements. But sometimes statements come out during the course of an investigation that might get taken out of context. So your client could take the stand to explain why they said it or what they were thinking instead of just having that statement out there with no explanation. So I think it really, really depends on what the statement is, who it was said to, if the full context of the statement is being introduced, or if it's just a snippet of the statement, and whether or not your client can explain something that they may have said or may have not said and why they said it or didn't say it. So I think an explanation, sometimes a jury member wants to hear an explanation. And so that's another reason why you might want to put your client on the stand to offer that explanation. But you're right, and the judge, is boilerplate jury instructions that, it's a constitutional right. The defendant does not need to take the stand and you can't hold it against them. The jury members can't be saying, well, I wish she did, or what would she have said? They can't do any of that kind of speculation. So it is boilerplate, but as a defense attorney, that's something I would ask about in voir dire. I would make sure each juror knows that you do not need to hear from my client and you can't hold that against my client in any way. And if any person hesitates on that question, I would immediately try to get them off the jury for that reason.
Folks, again, we're speaking with attorney Stephanie Murphy. Stephanie, I'm just curious if perhaps the stakes have been raised where, because we've seen all these endless clips of Karen Reed, and this isn't from 10 years ago. They show the date. This is from last June. This is from last April, where she's doing these interviews. I'm just curious, your personal or professional opinion. But do you think that raises the stakes in the minds of the jury that they might expect to hear from her only because they have seen her conducting all these interviews?
I mean, they've heard from her so many times, not directly from her to them, but they've heard from her in statements and video clips and everything like that. And what the Commonwealth introduces are not good statements of her. They're the statements that probably the defense doesn't want to get in. So whether or not the defense either has to call her to rebut that or to share context in it, or they have to somehow argue them away in closing arguments. So it'll be interesting what route they decide. But it does seem like the jury has heard a lot from Karen without Karen ever taking the stand. So it's very interesting in that regard. Typically in a case, you might get one or two statements by the defendant in police custody, or an excited utterance and stuff like that. But in this case, you have actual statements that weren't taken that long ago, well after the incident, that can definitely be used to help her or used to hurt her. So it's kind of needs some explanation and some context.
What about also, I want to just touch on this. So there was a female police officer that testified the other day. She was a Canton police officer. Now she's a Boston police officer. And it was very clear she didn't want to be there. She even said, I don't even know why I'm here. I saw different people putting in comments, so she should just take the fifth or she shouldn't have gone. Could you just address this business? I think for some reason people think like take the fifth is like a get out of jail free card if you're playing Monopoly, or what's the danger of someone that, if they just disobeyed and if she, whatever, didn't show up that day?
Well, I mean, she's under a court order. Typically, it's a subpoena for witnesses, and she can get picked up on a body attachment. Also, she's a law enforcement officer, so she knows the rules and stuff like that. So a law enforcement officer, typically in my experience, will always show up at, on a subpoena and testify. That's part of their job. Law enforcement officers, their job is to be neutral, not be one-sided and tell the facts and tell the truth. So although she didn't know why she was being called or what was being said or why her involvement, she needs to go to court and she needs to testify in court, and she needs to be honest and open and everything like that when she is under oath in the courthouse.
Now, one other last question on the Karen Reed trial, and Stephanie, there's a couple of things that need to happen. Obviously, the defense needs to wrap up. They need to, then we'll have closing arguments, and then jury instructions. Of the three different charges, what really stands out here is that, there's the murder two, there's also the charge, the lesser of manslaughter, and then there's the operating under the influence of alcohol. I'm just curious, how would that be positioned to the jury? In other words, people should need to understand, is it possible the jury could find her guilty on all three charges, or maybe two of the charges, or maybe just one of the charges?
Yeah, absolutely. So the jury, along with the instructions and all the evidence, when they go to deliberate, they'll have a verdict form, and each of those counts will be laid out. It'll be guilty or not guilty and everything like that. And the juror's responsibility is to go through each charge, each and every element that's laid out in the jury instructions, and make sure the Commonwealth has met each of these elements beyond a reasonable doubt. So they can't just say, oh, well, maybe, it has to be beyond a reasonable doubt, each element, for them to click, the guilty box next to it. So you can definitely get something where it's a dismissal on count one, guilty on counts 2 and 3, or any combination, or all guilties, all not guilty. It's completely up to the jury to decide that. And just because they found one guilty doesn't necessarily mean they'll find another charge of her being guilty.
I have one final question for you. A lot of people say, and I hear this, it only takes one. It only takes one juror to, tie up and the whole thing. But I'm just curious your thought, because my experience has been when I've interviewed people that have been in juries, they have told me, and obviously they weren't as high profile as the Karen Reed trial or anything, but they've told me that afterwards, when they went into deliberation, that it was a 10-2 vote. And this guy that told me said he was one of the two saying not guilty. But then there was him and another woman. And then when the woman caved, it became 11-1. And he said, oh, the hell with this. I'm not going to just swim upstream. The point I'm trying to make is, have you ever had a situation where there is one holdout? I just have found that in principle, people think that. But I have found it's very difficult when you've spent this amount of time with a group. To me, it would just take a certain type of individual to have the fortitude to stand up against, 11 other people.
I think you're absolutely right in terms of, one person or two people hold out. I mean, my understanding is that they typically vote quite early and kind of see where they are on everything. And then from there, the discussions are, why do you think this way, or why do you think that way, or what else is missing? What are you needing, that the Commonwealth had to prove, or what specific element? So in terms of that, I think it's a really great way to just have an open conversation about what elements are met, what elements are not met, where do people stand. But I've definitely had many jury trials where I know there's been one or two holdouts, and whether or not they hold out the entire time, or if they, cave and are convinced, I hope they're not caving. I hope it's more they are convinced, or, the other arguments are so strong and they're looking at it from a different way. But I'm not sure if the Commonwealth has it, but in Rhode Island, sometimes if the juror is out for a while and they send a note in saying they can't reach a verdict, it's kind of an Allen charge at that point, where the court will bring them back in and address them and say, it's your job to come to a verdict. You have to be open-minded, and let's see if we can get this case resolved. But in all practicality speaking, this case is a long time. If it's coming on a Friday afternoon, I mean, I hope no juror would ever bend to just cave into pressure. But you never know what happens behind those closed doors.
That was, I interviewed someone one time, and that was exactly that scenario. It was Friday afternoon. The judge was threatening to bring him in on Saturday. I think it was just a veiled threat. But he told me, he had tickets for the PC game that night. So he's like, oh, the hell with it. Just voted.
I know. You never know. You never know. Some judges allow you to talk to the juror members after. Some judges don't, depending on the verdict and stuff like that. So it's always a great opportunity when you can speak to the jurors. Typically in Rhode Island, it's after like a not guilty verdict and stuff like that you go and speak to them. And it's so funny what they'll say, why they decided the way they did. It's probably something that, many people never thought of. It's just something that stuck with them. But I feel like I learned more from the jurors' conversations afterwards than I did in the trial. So it's a very unique and special experience to be a part of this.
Folks, again, it's attorney Stephanie Murphy. Stephanie, another high-profile case. It's not getting as much attention simply because there's no cameras allowed in federal court, but it is the Diddy trial. And unless I'm missing something, and I'm not following it day to day, but I don't see the sex trafficking. It's definitely maybe a domestic violence case, but I want to hear your thoughts on it.
No, I agree with you. And we've been both saying this from the get-go and stuff like that. The testimony is really about just an awful relationship that's really bad, about a person who maybe doesn't treat people very well and stuff like that. And all the evidence seemed to be domestic violence incidences that get out of control, or people are getting bribed not to report it or destroy evidence and stuff like that. But yeah, we're not getting the full picture because we are not in the courtroom with them. But it does seem very chaotic with some disruptions and everything like that. So I was following it a lot closer kind of last week. And then kind of when it went off tangent, haven't been following it as close because I just really don't understand the relevancy of some of this testimony with the charges.
Two other quick stories. This one is unusual, but a man is accused of following two women through a Woonsocket store and then touching himself inappropriately, and he's facing a judge. Can you touch on that? Is, maybe someone is saying, hey, I'm not touching them. I'm just looking at them, and I'm seemingly they're claiming he's pleasuring himself, but his argument is, I never approached them. I didn't talk to them. I didn't say anything. I was just following them.
I think it comes down to like if there was exposure of any private parts and stuff like that. I don't know the facts that well in this case, but those are definitely some arguments if I was his attorney to make and stuff like that. But, at the same time, people shouldn't be allowed to do some of these things in public places, in front of kids, in front of other people. So it's kind of a fine line, but it'll be interesting to see what these witnesses actually can testify to about what they saw, what they didn't see. Also, if anything was said and what was said back. So these are all, fine details that I think will, in terms of whether the charges stick, what the charges are. But I know in any of these sex crimes and stuff like that, the most important thing for my clients are typically the registration requirement of it. So there's a lot of sex charges in Rhode Island where it's required registration. And that is typically what most of my clients, do not want to happen. They might admit to some wrongdoing, but they don't want to have to register for the next 10 years. So I'll be very interested to see the fine details and what exactly happens in this case. But I think there's arguments on both sides.
And finally, Warwick installs cameras to crack down on red light violations. I always get people that contact me saying that they somehow, and I don't know this, believe in the Constitution that unless a police officer gives you the ticket, it gets thrown out in court. Could you address that?
That argument in Massachusetts, I think the Commonwealth ruled that cameras could be unconstitutional in terms of some charges because of that fact. You have a right to kind of know what you're charged with, who's charging you, and stuff like that. But in Rhode Island, they definitely a lot of tickets given out. I've heard since video cameras got put up, over $20 million in tickets have been issued. So that's a huge number for the state of Rhode Island. I know just from the defense perspective is that a camera violation without an officer like witnessing it firsthand does not go on your driving record. So I'm not saying it's right or anything like that, but it's a traffic ticket, but does not go on your actual driving record because of the fact there's a camera kind of citing you for it. What was interesting in Warwick is that the first 30 days are just going to be a warning and not an actual violation. So I wonder how that first 30 days is going to go. I do feel like a lot of these camera tickets and everything are targeting the people who live in the community, who are driving, down these major roads each and every day. I mean, some of these intersections, I'm sure people leaving, coming, going to and from their house drive through the intersection 6-8 times a day. So it is really, I feel, targeting the local residents and not the people driving through speeding. So I find it really interesting. And we do represent a lot of people with school bus tickets, traffic tickets, speeding tickets, all done by camera.
Folks, again, she is attorney Stephanie Murphy. Stephanie, excellent job as always, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, John. Have a good day.
All right, folks, there it is. Attorney Stephanie Murphy right here. Now, good afternoon. We do have some breaking news and some big news with the Karen Read trial that I'm going to touch on and get into, and it's pretty significant. It's very significant. You've been following it, and I'm going to get to it in just a moment. Let me get on schedule here. Folks, this portion of our program is brought to you by Propane Plus. Remember, for all your propane needs, call Propane Plus today, 401-885-4209. In Massachusetts, 508-252-3359. Propane Plus heating and cooling. And also, they're always there for you 24/7 online at propaneplus.com. All right, we are learning with the Karen Read trial. I'm going to talk about, and again, good afternoon, everyone. Right now, we're live 1 to 2. And I set this up kind of during what's normally the lunch break in court. So it's by design. We're live on AM 1380 and 99.9 FM. We're broadcasting. We're also on Facebook Live, on X, and also on YouTube. So here's what we're learning. That the defense, and I will be posting this, the final 3 witnesses will be Dr. Wolf from ARCA, Dr. Rensler from ARCA, and also this Lapazada. Lapazada is the former medical examiner of Rhode Island. Now, who's missing from that list? We have plenty of time to talk about those 3 witnesses, which I think Hank Brennan will be in rare form going after the special prosecutor. But between now in the end of the hour, I'm going to talk about the dog bites, but this is really significant. Who's not on that list? Richard Green. Richard Green is not on that list. So what does that mean for the Karen Read trial? Well, what it means is a big foundation of the Karen Read defense was this 227 Google search. And that was the foundation. It was really the cornerstone, if you will, of the conspiracy. And that was that at 227, that Jen McCabe had Googled the famous House Long to Die in Cold. Now, the Commonwealth, this time around, with Ian Whiffen and with Jessica Hyde, they nailed down that it never happened at 227. By the way, that was when the Safari, when it was opened, it was not a timestamp of when it was actually Googled. There's testimony, and this is really important. There's testimony right now that has not been challenged successfully that the Google search first happened at 623 and 624. So that's what's right now in the record. The defense is not bringing in Richard Green. We also learned from Ian Whiffen that Richard Green had actually contacted him. Richard Green is the guy in the first trial that stepped forward and testified that the Google search, how slowing to die in the cold, happened at 2:27. He's not testifying this time. So what does that mean? It means the defense is conceding that there was no Google search at 2:27. That gets Jen McCabe big time. I'm not saying she's on the hook, but like way off the hook. Do you understand that part of the conspiracy is dead? I want to touch about Marie Russell. Also, what you should know right now is the Commonwealth, the prosecution, Hank Brennan, they're in a really strong position. We're not seeing a robust defense. We'll see. I'll let these witnesses, we'll wait. I don't want to jump the gun on that. We have time to talk about it. But I want to touch on these dog bites. And I want to also, I continue to see these comments of people. Oh, I'm so disappointed in you. And oh, are you foolish and blah, blah, blah. It's nonsense. Did it ever occur to you that maybe that I know something that you don't know? You're not open to that? That maybe Hank Brennan knows something that you don't know? That all the police that are testifying know something that you don't know? That all the witnesses and the first responders and everyone involved in the case, is that even possible? Or are we still just going along with, that everybody's a liar? I want to talk about the dog bites. Folks, this portion of our program is brought to you by Kids Club on the Pike. Now, summer camp is coming. On a hot day like today, you start thinking about, okay, it is going to start to get hot. Kids Club on the Pike. They're right off of 295 on the Cranston-Johnston line. Now, it is the perfect spot right on Plainfield Pike for a birthday party venue, before and after school care, preschool. Kids Club on the Pike. Call them, but they run a great summer camp for your child or grandchild. At least reserve their spot, because once it's filled, it's filled. 401-443-5336. I share their Facebook and their social media. It's Kids Club on the Pike. Let's talk. I still see these people in there posting on my pages that those are dog bites. Hold on. I also just want to make sure I'm not missing anything during this time. So let me just, because sometimes news can break and I don't like to, okay. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Nothing serious. Okay. Let's talk about the dog bites. Ready? They're not dog bites. There's no dog DNA. These, quote, dog bites, and I still see people putting that, they're dog bites. None of the wounds punctured. Does that sound like a dog bite to you? Do you understand a dog with the teeth? It would puncture the skin. This woman, Marie Russell, the fraud, was saying that those are dog abrasions. It doesn't make sense. Think of a dog. Why would the dog just go for his right arm? What about his right leg? What about the left leg? What about his left arm? What about his neck? Dogs that are trained to attack people, they actually go gory, but they go for the neck. Those are not dog bites. There's no dog DNA. Someone said, well, there's pig DNA. That could be from a dog treat, or it could be from bacon, from a cheeseburger. That, God bless me, that, goodness. Sorry about that, folks. Cheap blow in Chad Brown last night. It's touch DNA. So if John O'Keefe had bacon and eggs and then wiped his hand, there's pig DNA. There's no dog DNA. When a dog attacks someone, there's saliva, there's hair. The teeth match up. When you go to the dentist, and maybe some of the people that believe this don't go to the dentist, but when you go to the dentist and they're cleaning your teeth, and then maybe the hygienist brings in the dentist and says, I think I see a problem with, and they name a number of your teeth, 27 or whatever it is. Each tooth, all of us, all of our teeth are numbered, right? Top and bottom. They know exactly the tooth. It's the same thing for a dog. They can tell what type of teeth. Why would it be? Those are dog bites. There's no puncture. There was no puncture of the skin. And on top of that, here's what you should know. The dog's alive. Chloe the dog. Chloe was rehomed because he was aggressive, or she was aggressive towards other dogs, not people. Chloe's alive. Many of you that are just picking up the case don't realize this past spring, Hank Brennan offered Marie Wilson, the dog fraud expert, would you like to examine the dog? Think of this. They offered her, you're the dog expert. We have the dog. We know where the dog is. We're going to allow you, you can go. Think of this opportunity. You can match the teeth of the dog with his arm. Think what a gold mine opportunity that would be. The gold mine opportunity. Oh, wow. She gets to do a match, right? On the teeth, they sedate the dog, and they could do it on the teeth and then match it to his arm. Marie Wilson had no interest in doing that. She said, oh, no, I don't want to do that. Why doesn't she want to do it? Because it keeps alive this false narrative that those are dog bites. They're not dog bites. And on top of that, let's just say they were, for argument's sake. For argument's sake, let's say they are dog bites. So what does that mean? The dog bit him at the end of the driveway as he's lying in there? The dog bit him by the flagpole? Who said it's their dog? Who said it's their dog? Did a neighbor let out a dog? How many dogs are on that street? How many loose dogs are there? Was there a loose dog? Did somebody's dog get loose that night? Who said it's their dog? All right, so Karen backed up, hit him. He's lying there, and a dog comes running down the street and starts biting his arm. So what? So what? Even if it was a dog bite, he's not in the house. As many times as I say that, some of you don't even know, he's not in the house. These last witnesses that the defense has, this is going to be entertaining. I'm glad, because Hank Brennan is going to carve them up and shred them, just like he's been doing with these witnesses. Lucky Loughran. Lucky. Oh, I didn't see him on the lawn. Good. You just validated what the witnesses said. All right, good. Because the McCabe's didn't see him either. And other people that left the house didn't see him. So Lucky was consistent with everyone else that didn't see him. And on top of that, people saying, well, it wasn't snowing that badly. Well, why is he plowing? I don't know about you, but when it snows, I don't even hear the plow until there's at least 2 to 3 inches on the ground, many times more. So he's plowing because there's 3 to 4 inches of snow on the ground. I'll even give you 2 inches. That's enough to cover someone. You're not looking for someone. So Lucky Loughran, who was pressured, if that proved anything, it showed that the defense investigator was working with people to try to put pressure on him. That's all that proved. So all he proved was when the McCabe's testified, they drove past and didn't see him. Either did Lucky Loughran. I don't think it had any effect. I don't think it had any impact on that jury. So what? He didn't see him. He also didn't see a huge dumpster, 20 by 15 feet. There's no bombshell witness here. And what, the Dighton police officer? That guy literally changed his testimony on the stand. So I repeat, where's the defense? Where's the big bombshell? I've been seeing TikToks. Oh, big bombshell coming. Where is it? No Proctor, right? No Richard Green, no Google search. These clowns from Arca are going to come back. Good, I can't wait. That's going to be the highlight of the trial, as Hank Brennan is going to destroy that little clown, that Dr. Wolf. There's something wrong with him. He misled. He lied. I can't wait till they bring it up. He lied in court. He should be charged with perjury, that guy. Him and Wensler, excuse me. Folks, this portion of the program is brought to you by ServPro of Providence. Call them today. Remember, when disaster strikes, call ServPro, 401-941-5500. They're fast, they're thorough, they're professional, whether it's fire or water damage, a flood, or maybe, you have mold. ServPro of Providence. They're available 24/7. That's who I would call. That's who I would call. You need someone professional. They'll handle it, tackle it 24/7. Fire, water, storm, mold, damage, head on. Disaster hits, you need the heroes at ServPro of Providence. Restoration, reliability, and results 24/7. Call them. I share their Facebook page, 401-941-5500. Lucky didn't see him. Yeah, no one else did either. You know why? Because they weren't looking for him. Listen, I'm out driving every night. I go down different streets on my way home. If there was a dead animal lying in someone's yard, I'm not looking for it. I don't see it. I'm actually one of the ultimate. I literally drive with blinders on. Many times if I'm a passenger, my friends and family joke about it. If I'm a passenger in a vehicle, I'll say, "Oh wow, look at that building." And they say it's been there for a year because when I'm driving, I'm just totally, eyes on the road. He didn't see it. And on top of that, it was demonstrated. The biggest bombshell of Lucky Loughran was that the defense investigator was working overtime to try to pressure him to lock him in on a narrative. And I don't know how he was threatened. You saw the police officer. She testified that they were trying to pressure her and she pushed back on it. But I don't think that guy did. But let me just explain something really clearly to everyone, because it all comes down to this. And I recognize that some people, they've had fun with the conspiracy. But here's the part, because I hear all of it. I've heard all of it from the beginning. I've heard that there's a guy named Scanlon, and Brian Albert called and confessed him the next day, and it never happened. That was one lie. I heard about the 227 Google search. That's another lie. By the way, if you still believe the 227 Google search, then there's no hope for you. And I'm not even talking to you. That has been disproven, and the defense is not even trying to fight it. I heard the lie that Colin Albert was this dangerous drug dealer, and John was sniffing too close, and he came in and he punched him, and then they taught him a lesson, and it got out of hand. Have you heard Colin Albert this trial? Have you seen Colin Albert testify in this trial? That was another lie. Do you see the reason I arrived where I am is, as someone that has been on this case since July of 23, I've seen one lie after another false. There is no Scanlon. When's he testifying? Nothing. Google search, lie. Scanlon, lie. Colin Albert, lie. Karen keeps changing her story. Here's the part of the story that Karen can't change. Here's why right now I remain steadfast. As someone noted, I have been in the courtroom more than any other member of the media. That's just the way it worked out. Lucky for me. By the way, tonight, Court TV at 9 o'clock with Vinnie Politan. 12 hours later, tomorrow morning at 9 with Julie Grant. Tomorrow afternoon, Fox Nation will be on Court TV all next week. The reason why it never made sense to me of no motive and no murder weapon. Every single murder case is motive means an opportunity. Motive means an opportunity. I did a TikTok about it, and people that have never followed a case try to mock it. Motive means an opportunity. Many times, the last person with the person is the person that's responsible for the death. Not all the time, but a large majority of the time. Look at Aaron Hernandez. There's a lot of different cases like that. But here's what the defense can't get around. Here's why right now, if you're on that jury, they're voting guilty. Ready? Here's the part the defense can't break, and that is her Lexus backed up. Hold on, wrong. Her Lexus went forward, backed up at 24 miles an hour. You know how fast that is? And then his cell phone never moved again. What are we talking about? Well, he was in the house. They can't get him in the house. The cell phone never moved from the flagpole. Well, it's dog bites. Well, then the dog was biting him and attacking him down by the flagpole. The defense can't cut into that data. Now, you may not like the data. You may hate the data. You may hate the fact that it kills the narrative. But right now, in that jury, in that courtroom, of which I've spent more time than any other member of the media, that jury is locked on that narrative. She went forward. By the way, a good way to look at this is when you're going to parallel park. When you're going to parallel park into a space, you pull forward and then you back up. But crazy Karen, 9 drunks in, after he had said he wanted to break up with her, after he said he was tired of all this nonsense, after he was ready to move on. No, what did she do? She could have just backed up when he was behind her, but that's not Karen. No, she moved forward to give herself more running room and then slammed it on the gas, 24 miles an hour going backwards. And where was he found? In a debris of her taillight. How about the people that say there's no evidence she hit him, except he was found in a debris of her taillight. Ready? Proctor planted it. Where's the evidence of that? There's no evidence of that. I saw someone this morning put, what about all this police corruption? What police corruption? There's no police corruption in this case. There's no evidence of police corruption in this case. There's no evidence of police corruption as far as in the case, in the trial, I should say. In the trial, there's none. Listen, you can run around saying corruption, corruption, corruption. You could say it 50 times. They're not demonstrating that there's any corruption. Maybe you can accuse them sloppy police work in a blizzard. Maybe. Right? Maybe. That's not the fault of the O'Keeffes. You think they're going to let Peg O'Keefe down? You think this jury, Peg O'Keefe sits there every day. They look straight at her. You think they're going to let her down and let that drunken maniac get off on this? Why? Because people outside like her? She's not liked in the courtroom. She's a maniac in the courtroom. I got news for you. The jury hates Karen Read. They have no reason to like Karen Read. None. Why? Why would they like her? Because of the voicemail she left for him? Because of the way they saw how much the niece hates her? The fact they saw how much Mrs. O'Keefe hates her? The fact that she has no children or spouse? She just has old man Read? Just her parents behind her? Then a sordid, ever-changing musical chairs of various grifters that come in? Who? Why would they like her? The text messages? You mean, oh, I get it. They like her because she kissed Brian Higgins. Is that it? Why would they like her? All those interviews she did where she's mimicking Peg O'Keefe, where she's talking about, I was a weak pour. That guy couldn't even make a drink. I ordered her a shot. Those are weak drinks. Who talks that way? A drunk talks that way. She was a functioning alcoholic. And he got tired of it, and I don't blame him. John O'Keefe had a lot going on. He had a lot going on. He was trying to raise his niece and nephew. And then he just couldn't get rid of this crazed alcoholic girlfriend, who maybe she was fun for a little while. I get that. And a blizzard's coming. So he's like, all right, whatever. I'll let her come over, stay over, entertain me a little bit. And then she backed up and hit him. That's what happened. That's what happened. That's what the data shows happened. That's what his phone shows. That's what the Lexus shows. These people, there's no evidence the vehicle hit it. How about her saying, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him? Not to one person, to a bunch of people. Talking about the broken taillight. Gee, why would she say that? So the niece is in on the conspiracy now. It's ludicrous. There's no defense. No. She's going to prison. She's going to prison for a long time. As long as Hank Brennan can finish this case, which I think he's getting stronger. Folks, this portion of the program brought to you by Arch Design Builders. Call them today, 401-207-4124. 401-207-4124. Remember, kitchen design, maybe bathroom. Do you need to upgrade your kitchen or bathroom? Maybe you're thinking of a new basement or deck or a special project. Arch Design Builders. These are top of the line, 5-star, custom. Call them, set up the free appointment. Ed and Roxanne, Arch Design. Roxanne will design it and then build. Ed will build it. 401-218-9707 for Arch Design Builders. Folks, I arrived at this case and my question was, I want to see if they can pull it together. In my opinion, as of right now, of sitting there, at least I'm honest with you. The evidence that I've seen points to no. Who else does it point to? What are the reasonable explanation is there? Oh, he got beat up in the house. By who? They don't even have him in the house. The defense doesn't even have him in the house. What's next? Where else does this go? Oh, it was in the garage. Oh, now they have him in the garage. Oh, I thought it was in the basement of the house. Why do they keep changing the story? I want to repeat. I haven't seen one other plausible explanation of what happened to him other than, gee, her Lexus went forward, backed up. He got out of the car And after 10 seconds, his phone never moved again. And she knew exactly where to find him. I grant you, I get that some people would clearly never make it as a detective. Maybe you're in the right profession of not being like that. But what does that mean? So some people, the only way you believe something is if you have a video of it. That's ludicrous. Most homicides are not on video. We wouldn't get anywhere if everything was like that. So it wasn't captured on video and no one exactly saw it. But they saw it leading up to it. We heard her saying, I hit him. I hit him. Folks, this portion of the program brought to you by Roofco, Rhode Island. Hey, call them. They have what a social media presence they have. 401-868-7149. 401-868-7149. Roofco, Rhode Island. Maybe you have wind damage or a leaky roof, missing lifted or curled shingles, granules in the gutter. They'd be happy to inspect your roof for wind damage, give you a free estimate. Listen, a new roof improves the value of your property. Call Roofco, Rhode Island today. Free estimate. Call Joe, 401-868-7149. Look for them on Facebook. Listen, I've never thought it was plausible. I think Hank Brennan, for those that want to look at it, put together an airtight case. I think it's solid. I think we know exactly what happened. She hit him and left him to die and didn't call anyone. And I'm not convinced it maybe would have helped, because according to Dr. Wolf, it sounds like he hit his head so hard backwards, it fractured his skull. It cracked his skull. It's so terrible to think about. His brain bounced how hard he hit his head backwards. These people, where's all the blood? Well, the head doesn't bleed like that. These people, where are all the broken bones? Well, you don't do x-rays on on a dead body. You know, there was a guy last night shot Chad Brown, and I'm not going to get into too many details, but he essentially, from what I understand, it's possible he was even deceased at the scene. Do you think they start running x-rays on his feet? You know, he was shot. You know, I'm not going to get into too much detail about it, but he was shot up wherever. Let's do some x-rays on his hands. Let's do some x-rays on his feet. Make sure you do an x-ray on his leg. Why would you be doing that? You don't do that. You do that for someone who's alive. He wasn't alive. Richard Green is not going to testify. What does that mean? It means the defense accepts there was no 227 Google search. That's what that means. What else does that mean? Okay, so they lied about that. Granted, that was a fluke. The way they pulled the timestamp, the investigator, it looked like 227. That's been cleared up, but that means Jen McCabe never Googled that at 227. So all these people that have said rotten things about Jen McCabe, who's fantastic, you should apologize and do the right thing and apologize to Jen McCabe. Lucky Loughran. Yeah, the investigator for Karen Reed, the investigator was pressuring him, and then, you know, they got the blogger involved. That's what happened with him. He didn't, by the way, he didn't find Lucky. It was the defense. It was the investigator that found him. That's another, you know, this whole case is filled with various lies. But remember, the Karen Reed case, the Karen Reed trial, there's no evidence these are dog bites. None. Marie Russell was given the opportunity. She could examine the dog. No interest in measuring. Why? Because they wanted to keep the spectacle alive. The dog is alive. She could go and look at the dog. She could have measured his jaws to show exact imprints. Had no interest in doing that, because this gives her the wiggle room to just say, I think they're abrasions. Folks, this portion of our program brought to you by Quality Asphalt Seal Coating, 401-283-9815. Quality Asphalt Seal Coating. What can they do for you? Call Corey. He'll seal coat, crack filling, pothole repair, line striping, but they will make your pavement look like new. Sport court, pickleball court, tennis, basketball. They also epoxy garages and patios and decorative concrete flooring. It's Quality Asphalt Seal Coating. Call them 401-283-9815, 283-9815 for quality asphalt seal coating. Also, with this nice weather, don't forget about Watson Materials, largest selection of landscape materials in Rhode Island, South County Trail, the pride of East Greenwich. Call them 401-885-0600. Free quote. Call Sean at Watson Materials, 401-885-0600. Landscape lighting, pavers, retaining walls, natural stone, cobblestone, Watson Materials, 401-885-0600. Well, folks, good afternoon. Again, it is a hot one. No court today with the Karen Reed trial. I think it's very significant that the defense is not going to call Richard Green. And the reason I also want to put this out to you, because there is speculation on whether or not Karen Reed would testify. Stephanie Murphy, basically our legal expert, addressed it. If Karen Reed, there's a very good possibility that Karen Reed told David Yannetti, her criminal defense attorney, I did hit him. As a result of that, you can't knowingly put a client on the stand that if you know they're going to lie. If you know they're going to lie. And that's why we believe, she was saying, I was asking him, she says she was asking him, what if I clipped him? What if I ran over a foot? That she claims she was asking. I'm willing to bet she was telling him, well, I clipped him. I ran over his foot. As a result of that, as much as I would love it, she can't take the stand because they know that they would ask her, did you hit him? And she would say no. Why else would you put her on? They can't do that. The reason why, maybe you learned something this afternoon, the reason why they can't put her on the stand, an attorney can't put a client on the stand knowing that they're going to lie. And the big question would be, out of the box, even if the defense didn't ask her, Hank Brennan, Ms. Reed, let me ask you, did you hit him? Did you tell your attorney you hit him? The answer would be yes. Karen Reed told David Yannetti, I clipped him. I ran over his foot. It helped me get out of this. I have an idea. We're going to blame the people in the house. Folks, this portion of the program is brought to you by J. Perry Paving. Free estimate. By the way, Father's Day is coming up. I talked to your dad. You know what he wants for Father's Day? His driveway paved. Call J. Perry Paving, 401-732-1730. And on top of that, they have a great package for veterans. If you're a veteran, whether it's your dad or your mom or your grandfather, grandmother, son, boyfriend, girlfriend, uncle, letter J, J. Perry Paving, 401-732-1730. Look for them on Facebook, but they have a great package for veterans. All right, stay cool on this Thursday afternoon. Court resumes tomorrow in the Karen Reed trial. Tonight at 9, I'll be on Court TV with the great Vinnie Politan. Tomorrow morning at 9, 12 hours later, I'll be on Court TV with Julie Grant. Tomorrow afternoon, Fox Nation live streaming from 3 to 4. Stay cool on this Thursday.